CFB26 just dropped, and I'm going to teach you how to recruit. So I've loaded up a brand new fresh save with Missouri State here. They're obviously a 1-star prestigious program, brand new to FBS. Whether you're doing a rebuild with a different school or a bigger school or a more prestigious school like a 4 or 5-star school, this video will still teach you a lot because we're going over pretty much all the basic and foundational like concepts of recruiting. I did take the recruiter skill tree when I loaded up into this. Immediately, it's really not going to benefit us at all, so don't worry about that. Honestly, I would recommend taking the motivator skill tree at first. The most daunting thing whenever you're loading up into a new save is setting up that first recruiting board. Generally, in your first and second season is when you're going to lose the most players due to just general roster turnover. That's when you're going to have the most seniors on your roster. That's when you're going to lose the most to the transfer portal. I mean, think when you're in the first season, that's probably the worst your team's gonna be. And when you're losing more games than not, I mean, you're gonna see more transfers than you normally would. So getting a great recruiting class with as many players as possible, 30 plus at the minimum, is crucial in your first couple seasons. And setting up this recruiting board in the preseason phase here is kind of daunting because it's going to shape what your recruiting class is going to look like for the first season. Now, the first thing you need to understand, you need to know what your team needs are. So if you press down on R3 on the recruiting page, you're going to get this Excel spreadsheet looking thing, although it's a little bit prettier. And it's basically just going to break down each position and how many players you have at that position versus what year they're in. So you can see how many underclassmen you have versus upperclassmen. The game does estimate how many players you're going to need at that position. This very, very cool brand new column on the other side, which is not, exactly in plain view. Potential transfers tells you how many players at each position you stand to lose because you're not meeting their deal breaker. They might want to transfer away. What you should be looking at is the senior number here, this column here. This will tell you how many seniors you have on your roster currently. Sometimes you could redshirt these guys, but they might just transfer away anyways, so it's generally not worth doing. The game does break it down at the bottom. It tells you we have 10 seniors on offense and then a total of 23, meaning there's 13 on defense. But it's very important to understand how many players you have at each position because you don't want to just accidentally go into the next season with like one quarterback on your roster. And you definitely don't want to take those walk-ons at a very important position like maybe O-line. Additionally, it's very important to just kind of double check the need number if you're going to base your decisions on that. It says we have 11 total receivers and we're only graduating 2. And so therefore, because we would have 9 on roster after that, we would need 0, right? But what the need numbers not take into account is the potential transfers all the way over here. We could stand to lose 4 more guys, meaning, 4 guys in the transfer portal, 2 seniors, that's 6. Against our 11, we would have 5 receivers on roster next season. That's not enough, and the game's telling me we don't need any more. So that's just kind of one of the flaws with this need number. So again, you could use this as a general like framework or guideline of what you're trying to accomplish, but I would still double check that number and come up with your own number really. Now, when you're assembling your board, there are 2 things that you must take into account. You have to get 30 plus guys in your first season and your second season. Again, we're losing 23 seniors this year and we have 20 juniors, meaning that I believe over half of our roster is upperclassmen. We're going to lose them within the next 2 years. Not to mention whatever of them might be potential transfers, whatever underclassmen might be potential transfers. The game doesn't estimate, I don't think, how many players you might lose in the transfer portal. It doesn't give you like a total number, so you would have to manually count all this up. It's something you should be keeping track of in your proper roster tab anyways, who you might lose every year to the portal, what deal breakers you're meeting and what you're not meeting. But more than likely, we're probably going to lose something like 40 guys total between the seniors and the transfers. We can only recruit up to 35 per class, meaning we're gonna have to get closest to 35 to make sure that we're not running into depth problems and we have enough players at each position. So now that we know that we need 30 plus guys every year, as close to 35 as possible, the second most important thing to know is that we have to avoid competition. We are a small school with 1-star prestige, meaning we only have 450 hours in the off-season to recruit, which means we'll have 350 in the regular season to recruit. Those hours are how you offer scholarships, you do scouting, and you gain influence with recruits each week. 350 hours is nothing you'll run out very fast every week. It means you probably won't be able to go after aggressively many guys. But if you're doing the minimum with a bunch of guys, then you stand a good chance to just kind of passively gain a bunch of commit. Now, are these guys going to be high level recruits? No, but that's not what we're looking for in the first season. In the first season and the second season, we're looking to lay a foundation of youth, of 3-star possibly prospects that, maybe don't ever start a game, but, could be useful backups in case of injury or wear and tear. Could be you know, guys that develop into star level players. We've all seen 3-star prospects that end up becoming 80+ overall seasons. And in fact, that was the strategy last year, was just get as many 3-stars as possible when you're rebuilding a school. And by their second or third season, if you're redshirting them their sophomore year, what have you, generally they would be 80+ overall. And so that's how you did a rebuild last year. Now this year it's a lot more nuanced. With the portal being as big as it is, you're more than likely to lose a bunch of players every year. You can't just sign and stash a bunch of players. You generally have to actually play them. But getting that foundation of young guys in the team as fast as possible, as early as possible, is critical, meaning that you'll still be able to field a roster every year. Avoiding competition is very important. If we're going up against, well, that's a bad example. If we're going up for this 5-star here in year 1 and we're competing with Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, A&M, and TCU, we're going to get obliterated because those schools all have A+ for most of their school grades. They have an abundance of hours. They have, you know, all the top facilities and stuff, and we're just not going to stand a chance. And the 5-stars and the 4-star prospects are generally what the behemoth programs like that are going to go after first. The AI follows a sort of logic where they have a limit to how much they can recruit at one time as well, meaning they're going to prioritize the best possible players they can get first, and then they're going to start looking at the 3-stars and rarely 2-stars. Meaning this page right here doesn't exist. You don't know about the 5-star prospects page. It doesn't exist to you. You don't have to worry about it. You don't even think about coming here. This, as far as you're concerned, is a ghost. You don't come here. 4-stars, I would say the same thing, but there's a little bit of there's a bit of a caveat to this, and we'll get into that. The 3-stars are where your bread and butter is going to be, and immediately you want to come to this interest column, sort by it, and anybody who's actually interested in coming to your school for some reason, you're just going to want to immediately throw them on the board. And then you're going to want to start going down all these positions here and look for anybody that has pipelines. We'll look at quarterbacks here, and we're going to sort by pipeline. A pipeline basically gives you more influence on a week-to-week basis in a certain stage of recruiting. That's going to make it a little bit easier to get them. It also does generally help starting interest, although in the case of these 3 quarterbacks and this guy up here, it actually doesn't. Now this year, deal breaker means a lot. Last year, you could kind of not be meeting someone's deal breaker throughout the course of their college career. They really wouldn't care. They might transfer, but generally they wouldn't. This year, deal breakers are dynamic, meaning this guy down here, Jaden Keaton, he wants playing time as his deal breaker, and most players actually do. In fact, this guy, Justin Madu, I've seen guys with like conference prestige and other similar deal breakers, which generally are static and can only improve, end up actually switching their deal breaker to playing time if they're just not getting played. This year, your players will prioritize going to a place where they will play. Now, that's not the case for every single one, but more often than not, I see guys who I didn't even anticipate them transferring, end up transferring because, you know, they switch their deal breaker to playing time. Does that mean you should avoid players who have the playing time deal breaker? No, especially not early on, where you're probably going to have a lot of playing time up for grabs. Later on in a save, when you're going after 4-stars and 5-stars, maybe you might want to start thinking about that, but early on, no, it's not worth thinking about. Now, we want to pay attention to the archetypes over on the right side there. Pure runner is easily the worst archetype, in my opinion. I don't think they're very good at running, and they're generally not good at throwing either. Honestly, I don't even really know what this archetype is supposed to be good at. They're not even better at running usually. Their speed is lower. But we're going to come here. We're going to look for some guys that maybe fit the archetype that I want to play with. If it says we need 2 quarterbacks, we're probably going to want to go after a 3rd just in case. Here it says we don't need any running backs at all. Now, I'm not going to trust that. I'm going to assume that we might have 1 or 2 that might want to leave via the transfer portal. We're graduating 2, and we'll have 8 on roster currently, so we'd have 6 total. And then we might lose 2 more to the portal. So it might be worth hedging against the portal and still going after a running back or 2, just to make sure that we have like 5+ on the roster. You never know with injuries and wear and tear. And as always, names matter a lot in this game. If you're not recruiting based on name, I don't know what to tell you. You're doing it wrong. Not really, but I mean, it's kind of a cool facet of the game. As we established earlier, receivers are kind of a need for us based on how many players we are likely to lose in the portal. So again, we're going to look on pipeline and just kind of go down this and look for any archetypes that kind of match what we're looking for. So like speedsters are always kind of nice to have. Might want to have 1 or 2. Contested specialist is easily my favorite archetype. Gritty possession makes for very good tight ends if you do want to go that route with them. I don't love elusive route runners, but they're generally really good playmakers that you could throw in your slot. Maybe not the fastest, but pretty solid with, you know, running out after the catch and stuff like that, getting those rack yards. I have no idea what a gadget receiver does. If anybody knows, please let me know. And physical route runners are another archetype I really like at receiver. They can be pretty fast, but this year with the speed really not being as important as it was last year, I mean, and like the difference between a guy with 83 speed and 88 speed is minimal. And trust me, you're not going to be finding a lot of very speedy guys in the recruiting. Last year, it was pretty common to find guys with 90 plus speed, 95 plus speed if you got lucky. This year, if you find anybody with 95 plus speed, your game's broken and you have to recruit that guy immediately. I'm pretty sure the highest I've seen just out of high school recruiting is like 92. So don't worry about speed. Don't worry about recruiting for speed. These guys, you know, the speed guys, you'll develop their speed and stuff over time. Don't worry about recruiting for speed. It's really not that important in this game this year. And the most important thing I could tell you about Archetypes is you have to avoid the raw strength offensive lineman. I don't know why they chose to do it this way, but having a raw strength offensive lineman, it is so much harder and slower to develop them. A guy with like a well-rounded archetype or agile or pass protector, they generally, like, their pass block, run block categories cost like 3 or 4 skill points to upgrade. A guy with well-rounded, it costs like 10 plus. It's crazy. Like, I get it. These guys are supposed to just be athletes who you're just trying to develop into a football player, but it's ridiculous how much harder it is and how much slower it is to develop them. There's really no benefit to getting the raw strength guy unless you're going for some sort of like immersion or like role play thing where you are trying to have like an athlete or two each year that you're just converting into an offensive lineman or making a football player out of. But from a purely like gamer perspective, these guys are not worth getting. JUCO guys are kind of weird. They will be a little bit higher overall than like your just high school recruits, but I still try to avoid them if I can. This year, since players seem to leave your program so often, you probably aren't going to get 4 years out of most guys you sign anyways. So like, I guess a JUCO guy really wouldn't be the worst move. But just for the sake of, like, you know, getting the most out of players you can, I generally prefer just going high school guys. And then similarly, pure power, I'm not really a big fan of. These guys aren't quite like run stoppers, and they're not quite pass rushers either. They're kind of a similar archetype to the raw strength guys on offensive line, where it doesn't necessarily cost a lot more to develop them. Honestly, the cost of developing them is pretty in line with like speed rushers or power rushers or whatever, but they're very slow and they don't make good pass rushers because of that. Honestly, like a pure power guy is generally a little bit better to have as an interior lineman and not on the edge. What a name this guy has. And I will say that you do want to target your outside linebackers, your Wills and your Sams, they're called in this game and really in football. You want to target these guys early and really get off a good lead with these guys fast, because they become very hard to recruit later on. Generally, they get snatched up by teams fast. There's not a whole lot of great options at this position in the portal either. Outside linebackers, for whatever reason, in CFB25 and in this game, are generally a little bit more rare to get, so it's important to jump out on these guys fast. Now, that said, you can move your Mikes, your inside linebackers, your middle linebackers, they used to be called, outside. You could even move safeties and cornerbacks to outside linebackers. They'll play a similar role there, but it's nice to get the natural position guys early. I've assembled my board. We have 35 targets out of 35. Now, again, we don't have a lot of hours. You can see there we have 450 hours. It costs 175 hours to offer 35 players a scholarship worth 5 points apiece. You can check my math on it, but I'm correct. The reason that's significant is because if you look over here on their overview, it'll show you their top 9 schools. Being high up on here and already having a lot of influence just makes it a lot easier to get them, especially if there is competition, which again, we want to avoid competition, but if we're competing with the likes of like Buffalo and Ball State, we probably can hold our own. If they do have a pipeline there, you back off immediately, you just walk away. So it's important that you offer all of the players on your board a scholarship in the preseason, because that means by week 0, the first week of the actual season, you'll have built some influence with them. Offering a scholarship gives you passive influence gain with them every week. If you do not do that, if you don't offer them a scholarship, you won't get that passive influence. And it does give you a good jump of influence here between the off season where we're at right now and week 0. Meaning we're not on Justin Madu's board, but if we offer him a scholarship and like maybe Texas State and Arkansas State there don't offer him a scholarship, we could jump up, which again just makes it easier to compete with other schools or just get off to an early lead, which means that competition won't be a big issue. That doesn't mean the first thing you should do is offer everybody a scholarship though, because you want to make sure that they're worth offering scholarships to. Now, in this window, you have 100 extra hours than you do during the regular season. So we're going to have 350 hours in the regular season to recruit with, and we have 450 right now. Meaning that when you subtract the 175 hours that we have to save for scholarships, that gives us 275 hours to scout with. Now, that's not a lot. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to scout every single player on your board. And honestly, guys at offensive line, guys really on the defensive line or just really any position on defense, not worth scouting when you don't have the hours to do it. The only players I would say are worth scouting immediately are quarterbacks, primarily, receivers, and then running backs. Now, if you're a guy that likes to run the ball a lot, I would still go quarterbacks first because obviously that's probably the most important position in football. I would go running back second and then scout your receivers after that. You know, on the flip side, if you're someone who, you know, needs a lot of receivers, might not, you know, throw the ball a ton, but you need a lot of receivers, it's probably worth to scout, you know, all the guys on your board first and then just kind of determine who's worth keeping and who isn't. Obviously, there's nuance to this. There's, you know, there's variability here. You know, if I'm in a year where I just don't need a quarterback, I would probably look at my needs first. But skill positions, when you're low on resources and hours like this, skill positions are the only players worth scouting right now. Yeah, it's nice to get the gems later on. It's nice to get the gem O linemen and stuff, and the guys that'll be cornerstones of your program for a long time. But it's just not really feasible to be spending your limited resources scouting those guys right now. We're going to be scouting some dudes. We're going to be looking for primarily hoping not to see bust. That's the most important thing. We don't want to go look for more guys and spend more hours. And especially when you're doing this early on and it takes so many hours to scout a guy, you really don't want to be wasting your time or your hours. Again, this has got to be based on what your play style is. If you highly value pocket passers because you really are just a sit in the pocket and throw it kind of guy, Theus probably is the most interesting one on the board. He's got the highest awareness, meaning he's going to come in probably as a 70 to mid 70 overall. Terrell Johnson with the very low awareness indicates that he's probably going to come in closer to a low 60 overall. Although I would say the ceiling is probably higher on Terrell Johnson than it is on Justin Madu. If you're satisfied with whatever variation of this is on your board, that's when you'll move on to your receivers or your running backs and scout them. If you're maybe unsatisfied, you would probably want to go find a quarterback you're happy with. I'm okay with these quarterbacks. We found our first gem, which means that this guy's going to have a better dev trait, which means he'll grow his overall faster. He'll earn more skill points on a faster basis in the offseason than anybody else would if he has that higher dev trait. Now, don't be fooled. This sometimes means that they're actually still just a normal dev trait or an impact dev trait, which are the two lowest. On rare occasion, for 3 stars, it could be elite, and best case scenario, I think, for us is that he's a star dev trait. Elite is the highest, and star is the second highest, meaning, yeah, they'll grow fast. Okay, so I've scouted all the players I have hours to scout for. If you look in the top right corner, you'll see that I only have 180 hours left, and like I said, we need to save 175 in order to offer everybody, which is priority number 1. So now we're just going to go down the board and we're just going to offer every single player. And if you do it from this need scholarship menu, you actually don't have to move up and down. I forgot about that. So you can see here on this page, I wasn't able to successfully add all of our team needs to the recruiting board. We're missing a couple safeties. We're missing a mic. You'll see that I'm over the recommended like need amount for a couple of those positions there. And honestly, that's by design. You can't bank on the fact that you're going to get every single player on your board. So it's kind of important to just kind of target the important positions first. Now, you can determine what the important positions are. If you start with a really bad offensive line, that's probably the most important thing to go after first. If you've got like a good quarterback and that's not the most important thing, you've got like a sophomore quarterback that you can keep for 3 years and go crazy with, then yeah, probably not the most important thing to go after an extra quarterback. Whatever we don't get here, we can target later on in the season or even in the portal. We're here in week 0. Let's go check out the recruiting tab. I saw that a couple players had already locked us out, but you can see we've also moved up the board on a lot of other players. So this will happen where some player just isn't interested in coming to your school, especially if a bunch of other teams offer them. That means that their total influence gained for that week or whatever is going to put them into their top 8 phase, or, you know, even top 5 for some. That just means you get locked out. It is what it is. There's hundreds of other players to choose from. All you do is you take them off the board and then you just go replace them. You go find, you go back to the 3 stars tab and you go to the position that you need to replace. And this is the strategy. This is the key strategy right here. Don't sort by pipeline. Don't sort by interest. What you're going to do is you're going to sort by offer. Scholarship offers over here. This is going to tell you how many other teams you would compete for or compete against for this player. We're obviously going to avoid that raw strength guy. And instead, James Landry is not a bad option. But if you see all the way over here, his rank, the player's rank, is going to generally indicate that they're going to start better or they might have a better dev trait. It's not like a guaranteed black and white thing that, you know, a higher ranked player is going to be better or have a better dev trait. You'll still find some solid players in the lower ranks here. But it's just Another one of those nuanced things. But this is where things get interesting. I talked about the 4-star prospects list earlier, how you generally want to avoid it in your first and second season. But you can see here there are some 4-stars that were not offered. We're not even on the any tab, but we can see over here there are a bunch of 4-stars that were just not offered. And this is something that was kind of an issue in the last game as well, where it was kind of easy to steal these guys from bigger schools because they just didn't notice them. Bigger schools will scout players and they will find the gems and stuff, and just throughout like a recruiting cycle over the course of a season, once they're done with their priority recruits, they might jump in on these guys. It doesn't mean that because they have 0 offers now, you're automatically going to get them. More than likely, you're going to actually face competition for these guys just a little bit down further in the season. So if you want to take a swing on one or two of these guys, I wouldn't recommend more than 2. All you got to do is just add them to your board, offer them, and then I wouldn't go less than 25 hours a week into them. This is another little tip for you. If you go into a recruit's grades when they're on your board and you look at their playing time grade, that will generally indicate like what their overall is, if they're like a really high overall 3-star or whatever, or if they're lower. Like we could see here Tavita Theus, he's got a B+ for playing time, meaning that he's probably as good as some of the quarterbacks on our roster right now, versus the other guys are a B-. Now usually it's a little bit more dramatic than this. Specifically, if we look at receiver here, Tevin Frazier is a B+ for his playing time, but the next guy up, Spencer Good, is a C, meaning that Tevin Frazier is probably as good, if not better, than some of the guys we already have on the roster, versus Spencer Good is probably just a little bit worse than them. If this is closer to like a D or something for his playing time, it means he's probably well worse than what's already on your team. It's kind of a little hidden trick to kind of see what kind of what a player's overall is without having to scout them. But we've made some room on our board, so we could come over here to the 4-stars and we could look for any that haven't been offered, like this guy James Candidate. He wants a C+ for playing time, which is what our grade is for him right now. He's an elusive bruiser, and I think he would make a great member of the team. You know, any 4-star I think at this stage would. And then there's Bernard Bowles. So we can add this physical route runner tight end, which is one of my favorite archetypes for that position. And then back over here, again, we can see no other school has offered this guy, so we're just going to go straight in with an offer. And like I said, you're not going to want to put less than 25 hours on them. If you really want them, I would even go with 50. Which is what we're going to do here. Same thing for James Candidate. Now, it does mean that's less hours you have to spend on everybody else, but that's okay. Now, this is the strategy. If you haven't been paying attention to this point, you have to be right now. You're going to sort through your players, and you're only going to go after the guys that you're not competing with anybody else with. Doesn't mean you have to take them off your board entirely. But in this case, with Sean Flowers, the right tackle here, Missouri is very interested in this guy, and they have a much better pipeline. Not to mention they're an SEC team. They're going to annihilate us in this recruiting chase. We're just going to immediately take Sean Flowers off the board. He's not even worth looking at. Now, in this case with Bo Gore, it's a little bit different. He is an archetype that I already don't really like, but we're also the 5th school in for. Now, none of these schools are particularly super prestigious, but that is a lot of competition. You're going to be fighting off 4 other schools for this guy, and if it's one thing if you're just going up against 1 or 2 other schools that might just not be that super interested in him. Competing with 4 other schools, that's a lot. So same thing with Bo Gore. We're just going to take him off the board. Quincy Knowles, same thing. There's a bunch of schools in for him. Rodney Tuetele, he's a little bit different. Now, Western Michigan does have the pipeline, meaning they have the advantage already, but if we really wanted this guy, we could definitely make a case for competing for him. But in general, it's better to just go after the players that aren't being recruited at all. And this is the strategy. Just put 10 points into them. You heard it here first. The strategy is find players that aren't being recruited by anybody else. Shudak, we're going to take him off the list because he's heavily recruited. But find players that aren't being recruited by anybody else. In this case, Justin Madhu is another option. And you're just going to put 10 hours into him, and that's it. Venzel Brownlee, nobody else is in for him, 10 hours. Eric Sharp is an interesting one. He's that gem we found earlier. A speedster with 90 speed. He might be someone we want to like really ramp up the hours for and make sure we get him. So even though nobody else is in for him, that could change, like I said. And so we're just going to throw 25 hours on him to make sure we get an early lead on him. In the case of Marvin Worthy and the case of Dominique Hendricks, Power 4 schools in for both. That means we take both off the board. We don't compete with Power 4 schools. However, Junior Crummy, there's no competition, so we will give him the 10-hour treatment. Now, I've gone through and I've taken off a bunch of the players that I'm just pretty sure we can't compete for, or just like I see too much competition, or just I don't want to get involved in that competition. And that opens up 12 spots on the recruiting board that we have to go back and fill. And so, again, same thing. We're just going to go find the position that we need to fill, and we're going to look for players that just have not been offered. In general, we stay away from raw strength guys. The CPU thinks the same way we do, though, and the CPU generally stays away from raw strength guys. and scoops up other archetypes first. Now, again, if in this case here, I only found 3 out of the 5 tackles that the game says I need available without any other offers. Don't be like too concerned about that. You want to try and like have your board be split between 50% commits from high school and 50% commits from the transfer portal. The transfer portal is huge. As many players as you might lose to the portal, you'll get that many players back. Teams are built by the transfer portal, and that's really represented in real life college football. Is like the transfer portal is how these contenders are being put together. These kind of like giant schools are fielding their football teams is by, you know, going out into the portal and getting all these guys. So that's how the game operates too, is like you want to have those young players come in and, you know, be the foundation of your future. But in the interim, you also want to supplement that with talented portal players that can give you a chance to win now. So if I can only get 3 out of the 5 tackles that I need, fine. That's fine. We'll just go get the other 2 in the portal. Now, I couldn't find any other 3-star strong safeties that haven't been offered by other schools, and that's okay because we could just come in here and grab some extra free safeties and move them over. There's not really a major difference between the free and strong safety in this game in terms of attributes required for them. It's generally pretty similar in this game. Obviously, in real life, there's a bigger difference, but it's also not the craziest thing. It's not like going from free safety to right tackles. So I've reassembled the board, and that does mean we have to go back through and offer scholarships to all the players we just threw on the board. Now, you might not have a ton of hours to do this immediately, so you might want to segment this between a couple of weeks here. It's like, for example, I just offered like 5 extra players a scholarship. And I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of splitting this between weeks, so that way I don't like fall behind on any of these players I just went and threw on the board. Now, we can flip through positions. So I'm going after a couple quarterbacks. I'm going after a couple running backs. I'm going after a pair of receivers. Of course, we got that 5-star tight end. Offensive line is one you want to jump on kind of early as well. So we're going after 2 tackles and then 2 guards. 2 edges, a D tackle. Even though Eze here, or Easy or whatever his name is, however you pronounce that, even though we're number 1 on his board, Troy's also in on him. And in general, like I said, you just want to avoid those kinds of competition. It's really not the biggest deal. Just go find someone else like Terrence Broyles, who we stand a good chance of getting without anyone in our way. 2 Olbs, or outside linebackers. I call him Olb. John Salas, the middle linebacker, a cornerback, 1 free safety, and 1 strong safety. And that's essentially how you're going to put together these super teams. This is only part 1 of a multi-video series that I'm going to be doing on recruiting. It is that complicated, where recruiting does honestly require like a lot of discussion and stuff, but these are the foundations. These are the fundamental pieces that you need to know in order to have success in recruiting. Again, we just want to avoid competition, and we want to make sure that we're replacing all the players we're going to lose to graduation and the transfer portal. Again, you might lose 40, 50 plus players in a single year, especially early on. So it's really important that you backfill these guys as early as you can. And the best way to do that is just to go after as many players as you can at once. You can see here, I mean, we're just going after a ton of dudes with the minimum points. I mean, more than likely, we're going to get like 90% of those guys. This is a strategy I used in my Delaware save on twitch.tv/Carson Yaps. And it worked out really well. I mean, you know, eventually the CPU will jump in for some of these guys, but for the most part, you're going to be able to like kind of sneak away with a lot of these guys and end up really minimal work for your recruiting. In the next video, we're going to go over like what all these things do, what's the importance of these, and then we're also going to talk about scheduling visits, mid to late season, like recruiting mindset and strategy that should be employed and everything. And then we'll also be talking about the transfer portal and end of season recruiting later on. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a follow, please drop a like, make sure to share this video with your homies, or don't if you want to dominate in those online dynasties. But definitely drop a follow or subscribe if you're interested in the content. If you learned something, we're going to be pushing out content like this all year long. And again, check out the Twitch. We run it up every single night for like 6+ hours a night. This first week of CFB, bro, I swear to God, I have not gone outside one time. I've only been playing CFB 54 hours in the span of 5 days. But as always, appreciate all y'all, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.